Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Wellness at Webb segment. I'm Holly Arnold. I'm the Associate Director of Admission here within the admission team at Webb. And I am joined today by Miss Melanie Bauman. She is our Director of Wellness, and I will let her introduce herself as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm Melanie Bauman, the Director of Wellness. In my role, I oversee our nursing staff, our counseling staff, our health education program, advisory program, and have the joy of doing certain things like advising the SOAP Club and our GSA and moments like that as well. Year to year changes a little bit. This is my 21st year at Webb, and I have taken on a number of different roles in that time. So I've been a dorm head, I've been a coach, I've been a lead class advisor, I've been a teacher. I've had an opportunity to kind of touch every element of life at Webb and clearly have made it my life. So happy to be here.
Thank you for sharing that. So we have a few questions for Ms. Bauman today as we dive deeper into understanding wellness at Webb. So our first question is, what do we mean by wellness at Webb?
Yeah, so well, you're in our lobby right now virtually. So this is the entrance right outside of my office, where students might be waiting to see a nurse. And I always think about Webb as a community of care that is actually quite a bit like a fish tank. So hence our fish here. Hopefully they are living in an environment where they're supporting one another, where there's different kinds of fish. We have low-lying fish and middle swim fish and top feeders. Web is a lot like that. We're a community that exists in lots of different spaces. Our mission is to prepare students to be active participants in their health and to prepare them for lifelong self-care. We're thinking about balancing physical and mental health response, ongoing support, and of course, developmentally appropriate education. And that education begins with a framework that helps students understand that our goal as humans can't always be to be healthy, but instead to think of overall wellness as a self-reflective process, one that requires knowing about ourselves, understanding the supports available to us in times of challenge. It's attending to our physical, mental, and social well-being. It's cleaning the tank as it is. And that dynamic, it's a dynamic process with ongoing change, and it's growth throughout our lifetimes that we're trying to really set students up to think about. So beyond simply thinking about health, we think about wellness as that more holistic space. We are thinking about creating purpose or meaning in a variety of different areas. We're evaluating that through self-discovery, reflection, and intentional practice in areas of strength, connection, and future goals. We're developing self-knowledge to understand our experience and our mind, body, activities, and values. We're supporting ourselves in moments of challenge. So that might be injury or illness, but it might be struggle or finding purpose. And of course, we're identifying the appropriate resources and utilizing them when we need. And that's kind of what we think of as wellness at Webb.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. My next question is, can you tell us how the health center is structured here at Webb?
Sure. So we are in our nurses station right now. This is Nurse Courtney's desk, and right over here, outside of the picture, you would see Steph Barron, our administrative assistant. The health center is open Monday through Friday from 7:30 to 8:30, 7:30 in the morning to 8:30 at night. On Saturdays from noon to 6, and on Sundays from noon to 8:30 p.m. During that time, a registered nurse is in the office at all times. And then, in addition, when we are closed, there's a registered nurse available via telephone at any point. That's for emergencies or sudden illnesses. Most of the time, we're talking urgencies, not emergencies. And then, in addition, we have counseling staff here Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 4:30. During non-working hours, we also have on-call counselors that are available to respond to urgencies and emergencies. The structure of our health center is that we have myself, the director of wellness. I oversee our director of medical services, who works closely with our nursing staff. We both live on campus, so we are working closely with the on-call staff as well as any of the staff that are on campus at any point during the rest of the day, evening, weekend. Our nurse practitioner can write prescriptions for many medications, so we bypass the need for external appointments that would typically be handled in either an urgent care or primary care office. And we are lucky enough to be situated in proximity to extensive external health services. So this is being in a college town that is also a suburban town. We're quite lucky. Pomona Valley Hospital Medical Center is recognized by Health Grades and U.S. News and World Report as one of the best regional hospitals. And because of the colleges, it ensures that a lot of the services that are available within our area are focused on young people who are newly learning to be primary drivers of their own healthcare. So that kind of helps us quite a bit navigate and manage some of the adolescent health needs. It provides us with access to both emergency and trauma services, but also a robust network of specialists that exceed what you might expect in a suburban setting like Claremont. On campus, we're working with families to bridge the treatment and care that's already provided by their primary health teams and to facilitate either that ongoing care or to facilitate new connections that ensure continuity of care or access to new providers when there's an emerging health need that occurs throughout their time in high school. And we pretty regularly refer to and collaborate in care with external therapists, psychiatrists, dentists, orthopedists, dermatologists, allergists, OBGYNs. Those are sort of the most common adolescent specialists, but specialists in almost all manner of healthcare are widely available in our network. And they're also uniquely aware of the students that we have and their experience living in a residential boarding community, because that is an area of oversight and challenge that not every physician or doctor or treatment provider is really thinking about. So that's a nice connection that we've been able to make within our community.
Great. And I know here at Webb, we have both day and boarding students on our campus. And
Mhm.
so could you tell us about the differences, any of the experiences of day or boarding students in terms of the service accessibility to them?
Sure. Um, in short, all students access all of the same services on campus. I would say that the major exception is that we don't provide transportation to day students to see their local providers. So that's not really something that we see. However, in the health center, we have facilities and healthcare set up to allow all students to use our services. So here's a little mini picture of one of the spaces that we use as our rest and relaxation room that day students and boarders use regularly. And we have students who come from the day community and are sick just like in any other school, right? So they might be using that facility. They're not generally spending the night, but they're using our services. And then we also have another space. This is a little bit dark, but this is our private room. So that's for kind of more urgent health needs, or if we have communicable needs where we need to really help keep a student sort of out of the general population. Um, we find that all students need rest, relaxation, or recovery as part of being on campus, and they need care at some point. And then we also have a variety of school-based events that are outside of the traditional school day that day students are participating in as well. So health and wellness care is something that we're thinking about carefully in all of those spaces. If we're sending kids on retreats, that's for every student that we need to be thinking about their experience on trips or extended day schedules. All of those come with the needs that students will need to access in terms of managing their healthcare, and they're equally accessible. The a thing that I always think is kind of interesting is the number of times that I've had a day student say to me, "Well, Nurse Kimberly's going to write me a prescription for that because she's talking to my mom and it's easier than going to my doctor later on today." So those are kind of added benefits for day students that I think you wouldn't see in a traditional school that we're happy to be able to provide.
Thank you. Very informative. My next question is, what is your approach to keeping kids healthy and balanced at Webb?
Hmm. We think about this as actually an entire community experience. So we use the model of a wellness wheel. I'm sure plenty of people have seen some version of this. I'm gonna really get out of the way so you can see a little bit of it. Um, but that's a model that we introduce within the first week of being on campus to help the students, but we also actually ask our entire community to think through kind of the totality of the human experience. So when you're focusing on elements that support wellness, so that's spiritual wellness and emotional wellness, intellectual wellness or curiosity, physical wellness, social wellness, and environmental and financial wellness, we're thinking about that in terms of what are the areas of strength, what are the spaces where people really need to be kind of revisiting that. One of the things I think is was kind of interesting. I was talking to director of our museum program. And in the museum, Ray Alf used the model of the time spiral. And that's something that we think about that's supernatural within health education and health management. The idea is that each moment builds from the past, but we revisit it in the future. And we're learning a little bit more about ourselves every time we go through, an event or have an experience that kind of helps build out some of our process. So, my understanding of my social or spiritual or intellectual well-being might look very different in ninth grade than it does in 11th grade. And those are things that we want to keep having students revisit and think through. Um, they're supported in that conversation by advisors or grade level programming. Our community values are embedded intentionally into our academic program and our afternoon program. But there's also a variety of layers of support that people might be accessing and thinking about that are, I think, maybe a little less obvious. And I thought that maybe I would share this picture, which is the back of our health center classroom wall. So, a number of years, what we started to do is at the end of the year, we had every student paint their hand and they add their hand to the chaos and cacophony of the handprints behind me. Kids will come and write their name and they will come and look for their friends. They'll look for student leaders who have made an impact. They'll find their siblings if they've both been here and try to kind of link their handprint in some way, shape, or form. But I think that the kind of overlapping and entwined handprints help kind of help us think, I think, a little bit more deeply about what it means for layers of support here. So we have advisors, right? That's a student's, first round of support, and helps them connect to any kind of adult or program that they might need support around. But then we also have peer advisors. Those are students who are doing that work to help integrate students into the community. And then in the dorms, we have dorm heads who are the faculty overseeing that work. But we have prefects, the students who are kind of speaking to students about their experience. Those are kind of assumed to be the most involved, but it leaves out what we think of when we think about the coaches and the way that they're helping support a student's overall health and well-being. Teachers and the conversations that they're having with students in those moments, afternoon program leaders or club advisors, places where kids are kind of finding that passion. So it is quite a network. We also have really thought about student leadership in a pretty intentional way that to me models a lot of what health and wellness in a community means. It means that we're taking student feedback very seriously. They are deeply involved and empowered to both share that feedback and then shape programming. And a lot of that programming are the primary messages of our community norms and values that to me supports overall health and well-being and growth throughout the community. So, some examples of that. We have a sophomore program where students are learning to confront moments of harm that have been caused and to have discussions and dialogue when those moments happen. Our student leaders are thinking a little bit about how do we have shared language norms because we have students who speak many different languages coming to campus, and how do we help them think through when do I use maybe my home language or a language I'm practicing more or a language that is shared by everyone in that space. And that is a way to think about not only our intellectual well-being and our intellectual growth, but also sort of that social and community norms growth. And then there's an underpinning in a lot of our rules that's called boundaries of responsibility. And the kind of core value there is that everything that happens within this community, whether you are choosing to engage in it or not, if you're aware of it, you're a part of it. So we're asking student leaders to think through, very deeply, how do we transmit that to students so that they're not hearing kind of the easy version of that translation, which is if something happens in front of me, I'm responsible for it, but more, it happened in front of me. I'm impacted by it. So that means I do in a natural way have a response to it, and then I have to figure out what to do. Right. So those are kind of meeting moments of challenge that are pretty normative for an adolescent to manage. And frankly, I regularly say to students that that's one of the things that's hardest to figure out as an adult. So kind of a shared challenge that we're all thinking about and talking about. In addition, our communication in adult teams is quite robust, and that helps to support normative growth points, to watch carefully for signs of needing added support, and to celebrate the moments in which we've been successful or navigated a challenge. So our lead class advisors and grade level teams work closely together. We have a student support team that's observing trends that's in the health center, the dean's office for behavior, the community and culture office for inclusion and connection, the afternoon and academic programs for intellectual and social curiosity and connection. All of those things we're constantly talking with one another about, and many of us sit in many of those different spaces. So it naturally means that we're kind of all talking about the same thing all the time. Sometimes I would say maybe adults would think that we're talking too frequently, but I don't know. I think we can never talk too much about what's going on when we're thinking about the growth and development of a student.
Yeah. And I love that the handprint image that really is such a true representation of the supportive community that we have here at
Yeah.
Webb. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure. This wall actually is, hilarious when you think about how things grow from a space. But we had a student who as a senior, had to go through a disciplinary event, and she had to miss senior skip day. And she asked if she could do something that would help kind of change this space. And she asked if she could paint the back of the wall. And we'd already had the idea to do the handprints, but it was that moment of thinking, like, how can I give back to this space rather than like I'm just in trouble and I don't get to go on something that's really fun. That is what she made of it. So
Oh,
thank you to her. I won't call her out publicly on the website, but she knows who she is and she knows that we love her and miss her.
and such a beautiful thing came from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, my last question for you as we wrap up, what do we do to promote wellness at Webb?
Mhm. I think that, I was thinking about this question in preparation for this. And, one of the things we have a health education program, right? So we have health speakers and we have a course, and those are traditionally promoting wellness, of course. And they're important. They're the most tangible and the easiest, I think, for us to kind of point to because they align with an educational purpose. But they're not the things that I think are actually creating the most impact. And a lot of that is because somebody might remember this from their own high school experience, but it's very challenging to have an idea or concept introduced to you in a class, to learn about it, to maybe have no personal connection to it yet in your life, and to make that really be the promotion of your own wellness for the rest of your life, right? We have to kind of come back to those in small little spaces. So sometimes what I like to think about are the ways in which I've seen the promotion of wellness be something that students are actually enacting in different ways. So this is an example of that. This is a little wellness space that's down the hall in the health center. It's called the PA Place. It's peer advisors created it, they decorated it, they decided what would be in this space, and it's designed for students who just want a more quiet space to work for any number of reasons. So sometimes it's someone who's in the health center who's maybe not allowed to go to their afternoon activity because they're restricted, they're physically not able to participate or they're not well, but they're functional if they want to do something. Behind the screen here, we have some desks for people to sit at for them to do academic work, but the PAs really wanted a casual space. What's missing on this side, but you can see kind of my hand coming up. These are yoga poses. So there's a yoga and stretching area that's here. This is outside of our gym. So we have, all of the resources that students might look for if they're wanting to stretch because they have an orthopedic need or they just want to do something to calm their body. But it's designed in a student space where students actually created this. We have another space on campus that kids have called the sensory room, and it's really a de-stressing moment for kids to be able to access. And they have all the things that maybe everybody else in the world is not direct marketed this, but I really am. Everything from fluff to Neatos to slime to breath reminders to fidget tools, anything that like somebody might want to help them manage sensory overload. And then they're thinking a little bit about how do we create that in other spaces as well? How do we make sure that maybe the dorms have something that is touching on all of those moments as well? That's kids doing that work. And they're doing it with us aligned and us supporting them. These are actually our peer advisors. This and this is 2 weeks ago in this meeting, where they were discussing in our classroom, you could see, and they were discussing, what is it that is most important for students to focus on? Where are they seeing the most kind of challenge? How do they create, they have a stress less week activity that they're doing this week to kind of offset some of the pressures of the end of the semester. So we have puppies and kitties coming tomorrow, and we have a blowing bubbles day to think about breath, but also just for joy. So those programmatic intentional features that come from advisory or dorm programs or health education or sports education with our training or our coaches, those are the intentional programs. And then what I'm seeing is our students really kind of create that in their own student-led way, in a more casual spaces so that they're taking it in all the time. And there are a few other spaces where I see this happening on campus too, right? So our chapel talks, we have 4 chapel talks a week, but students hear 2 of them each week. Those are regularly giving student voice to the entire community, and so many of them are framed around the idea of a challenge that they navigated, the growth that's normative for high school, and of what they experienced throughout their time. It's another way in which they are messaging back out, this is what I did to meet this moment, instead of this is how I make sure that I never have any stress or that I never get sick, right? An unrealistic expectation that might come, if you were thinking sort of more like about a programmatic approach that's like, let's avoid all conflict in our life, right? Something that we can't um, really manage and that's unreasonable to expect. The other thing that I've really loved about our overall programming is that if we think about a kind of standalone goal with sexual health education, right? The sort of traditional approach would be to think about STI, sexually transmitted infections, to maybe think about pregnancy prevention, to be thinking about the structures and functions of the human body. We do that in our health education program. However, I also really think about, well, what makes somebody healthy in their relationship later on that is related to sexual health? So that might be learning how to navigate conflict. That might be about mindfulness and understanding how to connect and read your body, right? So those programs we hearken back to and say, these are the things where you're going to find these skills that we're learning here show up in all different areas of your life. Right. And that is for something as, maybe significant as your sexual health, but maybe something that you wouldn't necessarily think about, right? How do you have a conversation about your spirituality with another person that shares a very different viewpoint as your own? And some of that is conflict resolution. Some of that is being mindful about your own experience and the impact it's having on you. And then the last piece I'm thinking about is the ways in which we use survey feedback within the entire community to track implementation of programming, and to consider not only the health of our students, but also our faculty and staff. Because we're a boarding community, it means that our energy, we are feeding off one another. We are swimming in the same fish tank over and over and over. So, I really want to make sure that if something is happening in the faculty space, that we are mindful as adults about how that will trickle down and impact students. And if something is happening in the student space, how we as adults who carry the responsibility for caring for kids are thinking about the impact it is on us. And we really are kind of are wedding those two elements of health together. So those are the things that kind of come up when I think about how we promote and then reinforce wellness overall at Webb.
Wonderful. Thank you for all of this wealth of information that you've shared with our prospective families today. I will be sure not to miss the kitties and puppies tomorrow. Looking forward to that.
Get in
Um,
line. You get 8 minutes of touching time if we're very busy.
and just for taking us along this journey, and getting to see the ins and outs of the health center inside the building. So we really appreciate taking the time today, Ms. Bauman. And I hope that future families can come and see the health center in person when they visit campus. But we really appreciate your time and your wealth of information that you've shared. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and take care. Bye-bye.
Happy to be here.